What if I told you that you could stride into any room, any negotiation, any dialogue, and completely reshape the power dynamic in your favor, all without raising your voice or needing to prove your intellect? That you could outmaneuver even the most brilliant individual present, not by possessing more facts or holding more degrees, but by grasping something far more profound: human psychology and the subtle art of strategic thinking. Most people fundamentally misunderstand this. They believe intelligence is about rote memorization, showcasing an extensive vocabulary, or parading their expertise at every available moment. But here's the unvarnished truth that separates the truly influential from everyone else. Outsmarting someone has almost nothing to do with what you know and everything to do with how deeply you comprehend people, including yourself. The most accomplished negotiators, leaders, and influential figures throughout history weren't necessarily the most conventionally intelligent. They were, without a doubt, the most strategically astute. Here's what the majority of individuals fail to grasp: the vast proportion of people you encounter are operating on complete autopilot. They're reacting instead of thoughtfully responding, speaking far more than they're truly listening, and desperately attempting to project an image of intelligence, respect, or power, utterly oblivious that they're actually exposing their deepest insecurities and vulnerabilities with every syllable they utter. They're playing checkers while life is demanding a game of chess, and they haven't even registered that the rules have changed. The truly strategic minds feel no compulsion to dominate every conversation. They observe meticulously. They listen with rapt attention, and they fully understand the profound power of a silence so palpable it makes others uncomfortable enough to reveal their genuine intentions. They never lay all their cards on the table because they recognize that one perfectly timed, deliberate move is infinitely more potent than a dozen impulsive reactions. They've mastered a skill that most people never even contemplate: the unwavering ability to remain calm and composed when everyone else is losing their composure. If you've ever walked away from a critical conversation lamenting, "I should have expressed that differently," or "I wish I had handled that situation with more finesse," then what I'm about to share with you will fundamentally alter your approach to every interaction for the rest of your existence. This isn't about manipulation or deception. It's about discerning the fundamental psychological principles that govern human behavior and leveraging that understanding to navigate the world with unparalleled clarity and control. Eller's Rule 1. Master your internal world. Before you even attempt to exert influence over the external world, before you ever contemplate outsmarting anyone else, you must first learn to outsmart yourself. This might seem counterintuitive, but it serves as the bedrock upon which everything else is constructed. The true battlefield isn't in the boardroom, the courtroom, or across a negotiation table. It resides within your own mind. If you cannot regulate your emotions, your thoughts, and your reactions, then someone else will inevitably regulate them for you. And that places you at an immense disadvantage before you even begin. Reflect on this carefully. Every single instance you become triggered, every time you lose your temper, every time you become defensive, flustered, or offended, what you're actually doing is relinquishing complete control of the situation to another person. You're granting them the power to pull your strings like a puppeteer. And once they discern that they can elicit a predictable reaction from you, They have already won the psychological game. That is not power. That is vulnerability masquerading as strength. True mental mastery entails cultivating the capacity to pause when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to erupt. It means preserving your composure when you're under intense pressure, when you're being challenged, when someone is deliberately attempting to push you to your breaking point. You simply cannot outthink someone when your emotions are dictating your thoughts. And that is precisely what transpires for most individuals in high-stakes scenarios. When you're emotionally hijacked, your judgment becomes clouded, your decision-making abilities become impaired, and you begin operating from a place of fear, anger, or ego, rather than from strategic clarity. The individuals who appear most influential in any setting aren't necessarily the most charismatic, the most overtly confident, or even the most seasoned. They are the ones who can maintain their psychological equilibrium regardless of the surrounding chaos. This level of mental discipline isn't acquired overnight. It stems from deliberate practice in small, everyday situations. When someone interrupts you, do you immediately snap back, or can you maintain your composure and respond with calm authority? When you feel the overwhelming urge to correct someone or defend your ego, can you instead choose to remain silent, understanding that sometimes your silence communicates more powerfully than any argument you could construct? Every interaction you engage in presents an opportunity to fortify this crucial skill. The moment you permit someone to make you feel insignificant, angry, or exasperated, you have already forfeited your strategic advantage. You are no longer guiding the interaction, you are merely reacting to it. And individuals who seek to manipulate or control you will meticulously study your emotional patterns, searching for the fissures in your armor, because your emotional reactions are often the simplest vulnerabilities to exploit. Mental mastery also necessitates that you stop internalizing things. Most people navigate life with psychological wounds that are easily triggered. So, when someone criticizes them, ignores them, or challenges their authority, it strikes directly at their core insecurities. But when you have undertaken the internal work to comprehend your own inherent worth and value, these external attacks lose their capacity to destabilize you. You become psychologically unassailable. Not because you are devoid of emotions, but because you do not permit temporary feelings to dictate permanent actions. The most composed person in any room is typically the one wielding the most control. And this is not a coincidence. Elite performers, astute negotiators, and experienced interrogators are all rigorously trained to regulate their breathing, observe, rather than react, and preserve their composure irrespective of external pressure. This does not spring from innate talent. It originates from intentional preparation and consistent, diligent practice. Rule 2. Become a master of human psychology and non-verbal communication. People are constantly communicating exactly who they are without uttering a single word. Yet, most individuals completely miss these vital signals because they are too preoccupied with what they intend to say next. If you aspire to cultivate the ability to outsmart anyone, you cannot simply listen to their words. You need to become fluent in deciphering the signals they are transmitting through their body language, their tone of voice, and their ingrained behavioral patterns. Outsmarting people isn't about being louder, more aggressive, or more overtly dominant. It's about being exponentially more attuned to the subtle psychological dynamics at play. Human beings are creatures of habit, emotion, and ego, and they consistently leak information through micro expressions, shifts in posture, vocal inflections, patterns of eye movement, and their precise word choices. These are not random behaviors. They are profound psychological signals that unveil what someone is genuinely thinking and feeling beneath their conscious presentation. Every person you encounter, regardless of how guarded or sophisticated they might appear, exhibits predictable patterns of behavior. Once you learn to recognize and accurately interpret these patterns, you cease operating blindly in your interactions. You begin to perceive the intricate psychological landscape of every conversation, understanding not just what people are articulating, but why they are articulating it and what underlying objective they are striving to achieve. Let's begin with the eyes, which are frequently referred to as the windows to the soul, but are more accurately described as windows into someone's current mental state. People can feign smiles. They can pretend to exude confidence. They can perform politeness with remarkable skill, but the eyes rarely lie convincingly. Pay close attention to the subtle flicker. When someone is posed a direct question, the way their gaze momentarily shifts away when they become uncomfortable. The delayed blink that signifies deep processing, or the narrowing that occurs just before they adopt a defensive posture. When someone asserts confidence, yet their eyes repeatedly dart toward the floor, you are witnessing a carefully constructed performance, not genuine self-assurance. These moments of incongruence between what someone verbally expresses and what their body unmistakably reveals are invaluable sources of information regarding their true psychological state. Then there is the voice itself. Not merely the words, but the tone, the pace, and the rhythm of their speech. Is their voice tight with palpable tension? Are they speaking unusually quickly, perhaps due to nervousness, or unusually slowly, indicative of them carefully calculating every single word? Are they excessively elaborating on simple points, which often suggests either deception or a deep-seated insecurity? Are they leaving unusually long pauses before responding to straightforward questions, which might imply they are constructing their response in real time rather than simply recalling information? Most people only truly pay attention to communication when it is directly aimed at them. But this represents a monumental error. You discern the most profound aspects of someone's genuine character when they believe they are unobserved. Watch how they treat service professionals, how they engage with individuals they perceive as having less authority, how they conduct themselves when they assume no one of importance is paying attention. That is precisely when the polished facade begins to crack, and you glimpse the authentic person beneath. Effectively discerning people isn't about making snap judgments or labeling someone as inherently good or bad. It's about cultivating a more profound comprehension of human psychology so you can navigate interactions with enhanced clarity and greater precision. If someone enters a room and immediately attempts to appear larger, adopting a broad stance, projecting a loud voice, maintaining intense eye contact, they are likely endeavoring to project dominance. But the pivotal question remains whether this is genuine self-assurance or a psychological shield concealing deep-seated insecurity. You will not unearth this answer by directly confronting them. Instead, you meticulously observe the nuances. What occurs when an individual of higher status enters the room? Do they maintain their dominant posture, or do they subtly recede? How do they manage situations where their authority is called into question? These behavioral patterns disclose far more than any spoken words ever could. When it pertains to deception, many individuals assume that liars habitually avoid eye contact, but this is not always accurate. A seasoned deceiver might actually maintain excessive eye contact because they have been led to believe that is the hallmark of honest individuals. However, they frequently overcompensate, creating unnaturally rigid eye contact that feels unsettling and disingenuous. Authentic eye contact is fluid and natural, shifting organically rather than remaining rigidly fixed. Your intuition processes information significantly faster than your conscious mind. Therefore, when something feels amiss about someone's behavior or their narrative, trust that innate instinct. Your subconscious is registering inconsistencies and patterns that your analytical mind has not yet consciously processed. Rule 3. Master the strategic deployment of silence and precision questioning. Ducks. In our noise-saturated culture, where everyone is perpetually vying for attention and airtime, silence has emerged as one of the most potent and underutilized instruments available. The majority of people are profoundly intimidated by silence because they interpret it as an emptiness that urgently needs to be filled. But this reveals a fundamental misapprehension of how psychological power genuinely operates. Silence is not empty. It is brimming with untapped potential. And when you learn to wield it with strategic intent, it transforms into one of your most formidable weapons. Most individuals experience deep discomfort with silence during conversations. They rush to fill vacant spaces. They over-explain their positions. They divulge more information than is truly necessary, all because they erroneously believe that the person speaking the most wields the most control. But the antithesis is true. The individual who can comfortably inhabit silence, who feels no compulsion to fill every pause, is the one who authentically commands the interaction. When you do not immediately respond to someone's statement or question, you compel them to ponder your thoughts. And the instant they begin conjecturing about your mental state, they have forfeited their psychological footing. People interpret silence in a multitude of ways. It could signify confidence, indifference, disagreement, or deep contemplation, and this inherent ambiguity engenders psychological tension that most people find utterly unbearable. Consider what transpires when someone insults you, and you respond with absolute silence. This leaves them in a state of profound uncertainty. Did their words strike their intended target, or did you deem their attack so utterly insignificant that it warranted no response whatsoever? This ambiguity creates intense internal pressure that irrevocably shifts the entire dynamic of the interaction. The individual who anticipated a defensive reaction must now contend with their own words and the profound weight of your composed silence. This principle becomes particularly potent when you integrate strategic silence with precision questioning. The refined art of asking the right questions isn't merely about gathering information. It's about subtly redirecting psychological energy, disrupting someone's meticulously prepared responses, and unlocking doors they presumed were securely closed. The essence isn't to inundate people with questions, but to pose the specific questions that delve beneath the superficial and interrupt their ingrained mental scripts. Potent questions need not be convoluted or excessively clever. They need to be intentional and impeccably timed. Questions such as, "What leads you to assert that?" Or, What significance does that hold for you? Or why now? Are inherently disarming because they are sufficiently open-ended to accommodate diverse responses, yet pointed enough to induce discomfort if someone is concealing something or operating from a position of deception. The true magic unfolds when you pair these questions with profound silence. Pose your question, then wait. Do not immediately rephrase it. Do not answer it on their behalf. Do not inundate the space with additional words. Hold the space and allow the silence to undertake the significant psychological heavy lifting. There is a well-documented psychological effect where individuals feel an irresistible compulsion to furnish more comprehensive answers when they are met with silence subsequent to a question. This pressure compels them to delve deeper into their thoughts and emotions, frequently revealing more than they initially intended. In negotiation scenarios, this principle is extraordinarily powerful. The individual who speaks first after an offer has been extended is typically at a significant psychological disadvantage. If you present a proposal and then steadfastly maintain silence, you acquire invaluable information about the other party's position based on their reaction to that silence. Do they immediately counter-offer? Do they seek to justify their stance? Do they endeavor to modify the stipulated terms? Each of these responses provides you with crucial insight into their negotiating strategy and their degree of comfort with your proposition. Strategic silence also functions as an exceptional emotional regulation mechanism in highly charged situations. When you abstain from responding to someone's aggression or deliberate provocation, you effectively neutralize their emotional energy. You deny them the necessary fuel they require to escalate the conflict. Within that profound stillness, they are compelled to confront their own behavior without the distracting presence of your reaction. People anticipate resistance, particularly when they are being deliberately provocative. When you fail to provide that anticipated opposition, when you simply maintain your position and observe, it creates a palpable psychological imbalance. They begin to question whether their approach is proving effective, whether they have misjudged the situation, or whether you are orchestrating some response they have not foreseen. The intrinsic beauty of strategically employing silence is that it necessitates no special authority or elevated status. You do not need to be the designated leader, the acknowledged expert, or the individual with the most extensive experience. You simply require the profound discipline to resist the pervasive urge to fill every single moment with superfluous words. This discipline is exceedingly rare because most people mistakenly equate silence with inherent weakness. But in actuality, it demands incredible mental fortitude to remain utterly still when your ego clamors for an immediate reaction. Rule 4, transform conflict into strategic advantage. A conflict is one of the unavoidable realities of human interaction, and the vast majority of people approach it with an entirely erroneous mindset. They perceive conflict as something to be assiduously avoided, minimized, or hastily resolved because it induces discomfort. But this perspective overlooks one of the most critical truths about human dynamics. Conflict is not a menace to be merely managed. It is an extraordinary opportunity to be strategically leveraged. When you comprehend how to skillfully navigate conflict, it transforms into one of the most potent instruments for firmly establishing your position and unequivocally demonstrating your capabilities. The fundamental reason most people grapple intensely with conflict is that they interpret it personally and react emotionally rather than strategically. They become entangled in the relentless defense of their ego, obsessed with proving they are unequivocally correct or fixated on winning the immediate argument. But this approach entirely misses the broader, more significant picture. Conflict is a profound revealer of true character. And when you can remain composed and strategic while others are losing their composure, you automatically secure a significant advantage. When an individual is subjected to pressure, their psychological mask inevitably begins to slip. You witness their authentic priorities, their vulnerabilities, their emotional triggers, and their ingrained decision-making patterns. If you can remain grounded and acutely observant during these critical moments, you don't merely survive the conflict. You acquire invaluable intelligence that you can subsequently utilize to your advantage in future interactions. Genuine power in conflict situations does not emanate from aggression or overt dominance. It stems directly from control over your own emotions, your meticulously chosen responses, and your strategic positioning. When someone assails you verbally and you do not flinch, when your voice remains unwavering and your posture doesn't subtly shift, you have already triumphed in the initial and most crucial battle. Most people fully anticipate retaliation when they are being aggressive. So, when you respond with serene composure, it compels them to completely recalibrate their entire approach. Transforming conflict into strategic advantage signifies responding with meticulous precision rather than raw emotion. Emotional reactions are inherently predictable, frequently messy, and remarkably easy to manipulate. Strategic responses, by contrast, are meticulously controlled, precisely calculated, and inherently carry profound psychological weight. When someone publicly questions your credibility or overtly challenges your authority, the natural, almost automatic impulse is to immediately defend yourself and to mirror their energy level. But this, precisely, is their desired outcome. They seek to draw you into a turbulent emotional skirmish that ultimately portrays you as defensive and unprofessional. Instead of impulsively taking the bait, you deliberately pause, maintain unwavering eye contact, allow the silence to stretch for a deliberate moment, then respond with an air of calm curiosity. That's an intriguing perspective. What specifically leads you to articulate that? Or could you elaborate on your rationale behind that assertion? What you have deftly accomplished is a fundamental shift in the entire dynamic, transitioning it from an emotional confrontation to an analytical inquiry. You have transformed the conflict into an endeavor for clarity and mutual understanding rather than a battle of egos and overt dominance. Now, the onus is squarely on them to meticulously justify their position. And while they are frantically scrambling to substantiate their initial attack, you remain impeccably composed and unequivocally professional. Understanding the true underlying desires of individuals in conflict situations is absolutely vital for strategic navigation. The vast majority of conflicts are not, in fact, genuinely about the superficial issues being overtly discussed. They are, at their core, about deeper psychological imperatives, the need for respect, the craving for recognition, the desire for control, or the yearning for validation. When you can astutely identify these fundamental, underlying motivations, you can address the true issue at hand rather than becoming mirrored in the superficial arguments. Sometimes the most potent maneuver in a conflict is not to engage in direct counterattack. It is, instead, to skillfully redirect the entire trajectory of the conversation. Allow the other person to completely exhaust their emotional energy, then adeptly pivot towards constructive solutions and tangible outcomes. This strategic repositioning instantly portrays you as mature, thoroughly professional, and resolutely focused on achieving results rather than engaging in petty personal battles. However, there are unequivocally times when it becomes imperative to establish clear, unequivocal boundaries and demonstrate beyond doubt that you will not tolerate disrespectful conduct. This does not necessitate becoming aggressive or stooping to match their negative energy. It means responding with an air of calm, unassailable authority. I do not operate in that manner within my professional relationships. Or, if we are to collaborate effectively, mutual respect is an absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite. You have no need to raise your voice or become visibly emotional. You simply need to articulate your stance with the pristine clarity and unwavering certainty of someone who has already definitively determined what they will and will not countenance. The paramount insight that definitively distinguishes strategic thinkers from everyone else is their unwavering refusal to internalize conflict. They meticulously analyze it, extract valuable lessons from it, and ingeniously exploit it to their distinct advantage. They comprehend that when an individual endeavors to provoke them, that very person is, in fact, inadvertently revealing invaluable information about their own psychological makeup, their habitual strategies, and their inherent weaknesses. Conflict serves as an undeniable revealer of behavioral patterns. And once you can proficiently identify these patterns, you can reliably predict how someone will react in future scenarios. This bestows upon you an immense advantage in all your subsequent dealings with that individual. Every confrontation metamorphoses into a profound learning opportunity. Every insult transforms into a discernible signal. Every attack becomes an invaluable chance to conspicuously demonstrate your formidable psychological strength and your acute strategic acumen. Rule 5. Think 3 strategic moves ahead while others react solely to the present moment. The fundamental disparity between individuals who consistently attain success and those who perpetually struggle lies squarely in their temporal horizon for strategic conceptualization. Most individuals are playing checkers, making rudimentary decisions based on immediate circumstances, fleeting emotional impulses, and ephemeral short-term gains. But life, in its profound complexity, is unmistakably a game of chess, and the individuals who master it are perpetually contemplating several moves in advance, meticulously anticipating consequences, and astutely positioning themselves for enduring long-term advantage. Playing checkers in a chess world is precisely why such a multitude of people are consistently blindsided by unforeseen outcomes. They become ensnared by superficial victories, instantaneous gratification, and purely reactive decision-making. They pursue transient validation instead of cultivating genuine, sustainable influence. They defensively react to trivial attacks instead of diligently focusing on superior strategic positioning. This myopic, short-term thinking might furnish temporary satisfaction, but it unequivocally fails to engender lasting power or enduring, sustainable success. Strategic thinking mandates a fundamentally distinct approach to decision-making. Instead of posing the question, what feels immediately gratifying right now? Or, how can I secure victory in this immediate skirmish? You instead inquire, what are the profound long consequences of this particular action? And How will this action strategically position me for future opportunity? Predictably do in respond. And how can I ingeniously leverage their predictable reactions to my own distinct advantage? This caliber of thinking imperatively demands substantial emotional discipline because it frequently necessitates the suppression of the ego's insistent craving for immediate insistent craving for immediate response. You might be compelled to willingly accept a seemingly minor loss today, to strategically position yourself for a monumental victory tomorrow. You might need to permit someone to erroneously believe they have won a particular battle while you are quietly and methodically winning the overarching war. Most individuals are simply incapable of enduring this level of delayed gratification, which is precisely why strategic thinking grants you such an overwhelmingly significant advantage. Consider how this profound principle applies to professional conflicts. When an individual disrespects you publicly or overtly undermines your authority, the typical checker's move is to respond instantly and forcefully to unequivocally demonstrate that you are not someone to be trifled with. This action might momentarily satisfy your ego and imbue you with a fleeting sense of power in the immediate moment, but it does not necessarily serve your overarching long-term interests. The chess move is considerably more sophisticated. You listen with meticulous attention. You adamantly refuse to overreact. You allow them to momentarily entertain the illusion that they have gained some discernible ground. And then, over time, you judiciously leverage your steadily accumulating influence to execute strategic maneuvers that incrementally elevate your own position, while subtly, but undeniably exposing their unprofessionalism, all without ever directly confronting them about the original incident. This nuanced approach mandates that you perceive every single interaction as an integral component of a much grander game. In the intricate game of chess, every piece possesses a specific, predetermined role. Not every single move is predicated on immediate domination, and occasionally you strategically sacrifice something seemingly insignificant to engineer a far more expansive and advantageous opportunity. Authentic power operates in precisely the same manner. It is frequently subtle, at times almost imperceptible, yet devastatingly effective when viewed over a protracted period. Strategic thinking fundamentally transforms how you approach relationships, high-stakes negotiations, and crucial career decisions. Instead of merely contemplating, what do I desire to articulate in this specific conversation? You instead ponder, how do I want this individual to genuinely feel at the culmination of our interaction? And what precise sequence of ideas will effectively guide them to that desired emotional state? You cease communicating solely and purpose of self-expression and then consciously commence communicating for specific, predetermined psychological effects. When evaluating potential opportunities, strategic thinkers pose fundamentally different questions than everyone else. While the majority of people focus exclusively on immediate benefits, more money, elevated status, instant recognition, strategic thinkers meticulously interrogate the long-term positioning. What will this opportunity genuinely cost me in 5 years? With whom will it strategically align me? What will turning me into contact with? What alternative doors might this particular opening inadvertently close? They profoundly comprehend that sometimes the courageous act of saying no to something seemingly good in the present moment allows you to wholeheartedly embrace something truly extraordinary at a later juncture. This forward thinking methodology also meticulously shields you from manipulation and deliberate deception. When you are rigorously trained to contemplate several moves in advance, you become demonstrably more challenging to catch off guard or to subtly manipulate. You begin to recognize incipient setups long before they fully materialize. You learn to precisely identify recurring patterns in people's behavior, and you cultivate an intuitive sensibility for when someone is attempting to position you for their own benefit rather than yours. Timing assumes paramount importance when you are thinking strategically. One of the most arduous lessons to assimilate is discerning precisely when not to initiate a move, when not to respond, when not to act. Occasionally, the most astute maneuver is profound patience. Permitting people to significantly underestimate you, allowing them to erroneously believe they have secured victory, while you are quietly and methodically positioning yourself for your subsequent several moves. This particular caliber of restraint is exceptionally rare and incredibly potent because most individuals feel an overwhelming compulsion to act instantaneously. Everything undergoes a transformative shift when you transition from impulsive, short-term reactions to a calculated, long-term strategic positioning. You cease navigating life move by move and commence playing the entire board. You become inherently intentional rather than perpetually reactive, acutely focused rather than perpetually scattered, meticulously tactical rather than emotionally driven. When other individuals eventually discern that you are not merely contemplating what is transpiring in the present moment, but also meticulously considering what happens next and after that, they invariably cease their attempts to outmaneuver you because they recognize that they are operating within a completely different game altogether. The most powerful individuals in any given situation are rarely the loudest or the most overtly aggressive. They are, instead, the ones who instinctively understand when to speak and when to maintain profound silence, when to resolutely push forward and when to patiently wait, when to engage directly and when to allow circumstances to naturally unfold. They play for superior position rather than fleeting attention. They consistently think beyond the immediate temporal moment. And as a direct consequence of this comprehensive strategic approach, they rarely find themselves pursuing power. Instead, power flows effortlessly and naturally to them. This, ultimately, is the definitive truth about outsmarting anyone. It is not about possessing the most extensive education, the most prodigious experience, or the most naturally gifted intellect. It is, instead, about cultivating the highest degree of strategic awareness, the most rigorous emotional discipline, and the most thorough preparation. When you master your internal world, learn to unerringly read people's subtle psychological signals, wield silence as a formidable strategic tool, adeptly transform conflict into an unmistakable advantage, and consistently think several moves ahead, you cultivate a profound level of personal power that simply cannot be shaken, manipulated, or irrevocably broken. Cease merely reacting to life and commence strategically navigating your path through it. The game is unequivocally chess, not checkers. And now you possess the knowledge of how to truly play.